It's going to be a very, very intense journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Frameskip podcast. I'm Austin Eller, and I'm joined on this God of War Spoilercast by my good friend Seth, Ares himself, Slakehouse. How's it going, Seth?
It's going pretty well, buddy. Ares, huh? That's
you got killed by Kratos, so it must feel good.
I always thought Ares was a really lame god. I don't know how you feel about that, but
yeah, I don't disagree. I thought his portrayal in the old God of War games in particular was like kind of...
Yeah, I'm like, really? This
you're
is
going to get
guy?
Like beaten by a demigod? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, this is the guy? I don't know.
So, as you probably guessed by the title of this podcast, Seth and I just recently beat God of War Ragnarok. Of course, that sequel to God of War 2018 just came out this past month or so at time of recording, and we actually ended up beating it, I think, both on the same day, if I'm not mistaken, based on our messages, which was pretty surprising.
So I was actually just thinking about this. I think me and you probably play games at a very similar rate because the odds of us beating not only Control the same day, but also God of War Ragnarok that's
true.
Very absurd.
That's true. That's a good point. So, if you're this far into the show, I'm just going to warn you now. You're almost 2 minutes into this podcast. If you have not beat God of War Ragnarok, or if you care at all about spoilers, turn the show off. Come back to it after you beat it, and we will still be here. We'll still be here with our thoughts, post-game thoughts, and more than welcome to listen to us next year or in 2024, whenever you ever play God of War Ragnarok, which I hope you do, because it's a damn good game. So here's your warning. Get out now and go. Jesus Christ, this game is so good.
I agree. Now, I know we had talked, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about how I wasn't really feeling it. By the end of the game, those feelings had completely gone away. Yeah. Completely turned around for me.
Yeah, and I can understand the opinion, because I think it was on the previous episode of Frameskip, you had mentioned that. I can understand kind of the slow feelings towards the beginning, because it is, pretty slow. I think there were some good moments at the start with like Odin and Thor showing up immediately, which was honestly pretty awesome. But aside from that, it's kind of a slow burn, I'd say, for the first like 5 hours. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
No, I honestly, for me, the weakest part of this game is like the entire first half. Yeah. I know for you, it picked up and caught your attention a little sooner, but for me, like the entire first half, I'm like, I don't even know why these characters want to do what they're doing. I really was not a fan of the pacing in the first half of the game, especially when we get to the Atreus segments.
Yeah.
And in particular, that second one, when you're in the Ironwood, I knew that I had to force myself through it in one sitting, or else I was going to put the game down, because I was like, I'm not having fun with this at all. It's sort of how I felt with chapter 13 of Final Fantasy 15, where I'm just like, I have to make sure I get through this and get to the other side, because I do not want to be here anymore.
So that's interesting, because I was actually just listening to a Spoilercast earlier. It was the Kind of Funny Spoilercast, and they had on the director of the game, and the director had mentioned how the Ironwood section is like really controversial. Like, a lot of people, I guess, are having issues with it. And I didn't really know. One, just because I've totally tuned out media when it comes to this game. I've just wanted to sit there and let it sink in and enjoy it personally. But I actually really like the Ironwood portion. I had a good time with it. Yeah. But I think it's because I was really interested in Angrboda. I thought her character was really well done. And so I think that's part of it. But I will say, I know, like, combat-wise, like, there really wasn't a whole lot going on in that section. I don't know if that was your problem with it.
No, for me, it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. And I didn't really think that it was a very interesting segment. And I didn't really understand Atreus in that moment being like, I guess I can just, abandon my quest for, it was, they said it was like 2 days or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, and just, chill here for a while. I don't know, man. I really I didn't like it. And, like I said, I forced myself through it and I'm glad I did, but it was hard because the whole tone of the game changes in that segment, which is really weird because you go from like this very foreboding, like, okay, Ragnarok is approaching,
Yeah.
um, tone to like all of a sudden, hey, I'm in the Ironwoods with this girl my age and she's throwing bright colors all over the place and she's a painter and I just didn't it felt very Marvel esque,
Yeah.
like Disney's Marvel esque, like that kind of character. Um and honestly, when it came down to it at the very end, I was like, well, she didn't really have any impact on the story overall.
That is
Um
true.
it seemed odd to include her in any way, but it is what it is. I don't think it holds the game back that much. I just think from now on, when I'm discussing God of War Ragnarok, I'm probably going to be like, hey, if I'm talking to like someone who hasn't played it, I'm probably going to be like, hey, just so you know, there's this really awful segment like 5 hours in. Just force your way through it because the rest of the game, she doesn't even show
Yeah.
up. So I'm almost wondering if that was a last minute addition because you never really go back to the Ironwood to explore or anything. There's no side quests there,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um, so I'm not really sure because
Yeah, I mean, it could be, and you're right though when you say it. Literally, I mean, you said it comes out of nowhere, and it literally does because
yeah,
I mean, he just goes to sleep, and it's suddenly like, okay, well, here I am in Ironwood. So I do see where you're coming from in that way, and I do agree. Like, it is kind of strange there are no side quests; it's kind of just her. But I actually kind of disagree that she didn't have a big impact on the story. I mean, I to an extent, I agree, but at the same time, I think overall her actual arc really fits in with where the game is going as far as, the whole game to me was about prophecy and fate and where you fit into everything. And I thought her whole arc of, hey, this is what I'm shown to do. I'm shown to show up here in front of, to her Loki and never play a role in the story again. I thought it was really fitting that she, in the end, she came back with Fenrir and it kind of
mhm,
assisted and helped them escape Asgard. I thought it was an interesting plot for her overall. I do agree to an extent, though. I mean, she was there in the Ironwood segment and then at the end, and that was really it. So I
right.
wish there had been a little more in between with her because I actually really liked her performance, her character as a whole.
Um, yeah. So the coolest part about that scenario to me was how they slyly reintroduce the time loop segment when with Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent,
Yes.
because it is implied, although not explicitly stated, that in that segment, Atreus gives the giant soul to that snake, who then becomes the Midgard serpent, which I think is
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, and I love they kind of bring that up after you beat the game. I'm sure you got the same dialogue I did, but you're like walking out from, Midgar, wherever you're at the
Hmm.
end, and I think it's Amir starts saying something about Jormungandr, and he's like, "Yeah, this happened." And I will say, I do want to go back to Jormungandr here in a second, but I like so far. Let me just point this out. I beat the game, I think, with about 23 or 24 hours on the clock, so I really kind of slammed through it. I played a lot of the side missions at the first half of the game, but as you get to the second half, as the campaign really started to pick up, I kind of just stopped on the side quest because I was so like invested in Ragnarok itself and what was happening. But the thing I'm really enjoying so far about the post game, and I'm looking forward to playing more of it, is it's an evolving world. Like you finish the campaign, but going back to some of these places and hearing Mimir talk about Jormungandr and seeing other things. I just got to an area. I don't know if you've seen Thrud yet. Have you seen Thrud yet in the post game content?
Where she flies away.
Yeah, she has Mjolnir and flies away.
Yeah, I did see
I
that.
love that stuff where you're like going back. It's still the same world you've been in, but now it's changed because of the events of the campaign. It's not just like for game mechanics purposes. Here's the game itself. Nothing's changed. Ragnarok hasn't happened, as many games do, where it just spits you back out into the world. And I love how they've played that off. So I'm really looking forward to playing more and experiencing more of the world post Ragnarok.
Yeah, I really think that the post game was created with a really delicate hand and with a lot of care, and I really think that's important because, as you said, with a lot of games, almost every single game I can think of that's an open world game, once you beat the story, it feels like someone just presses the pause button on the world, and you're able to just kind of explore. Like it's almost like it's stuck in time. And with Ragnarok so far, there's a ton to do that has implications, and it feels like the game doesn't end when you roll the credits. It feels like, okay, this is the continuation of the story. And I'm not really sure how they pulled that off so well. And if you notice in the second game, they canonized the fact that Kratos and Atreus did all these things after the end of the first game. They went and beat the Valkyries and did the trials in Muspelheim, and that is brought up several times throughout Ragnarok. And I think that has to be part of it, right? Because in a lot of other games, they don't even acknowledge the side content in the story. But with God of War and God of War Ragnarok, it's like, okay, well, we went on all these adventures, we've done all these things, and I know some people, particularly, Colin Moriarty, has problems with Mimir and the exposition when they're like you're quick traveling and whatnot. I love that stuff.
Oh man,
dude, when they're talking and like giving more details and history about the world and whatnot, it really makes the world feel alive, and it feels like a really living, breathing world. And as you said, the events with Thrud and Tyr that in the post game, and the remnants of Asgard, which is our direct implication from the Ragnarok event that happens at the end of the game. I really think that these things are all like critical to making the game world feel alive.
Did you have any like favorite moments from the game overall? I think for me, I've got a few, and I'll just list a few of them off. I thought the Tyr turn, of him being Odin the entire game was just insane. I mean, to me, it was on the same level of Atreus being Loki at the end of the first game. I mean, because I just never saw it coming. I never even thought of it.
I didn't see it coming either. And I with Loki, I feel like with that twist in the first game, like you kind of felt like there was something developing, right? You felt like there was something coming. With Tyr, I never even saw it coming up until the very exact second it happened, because I thought Brock was just being, Brock, just like kind of, being argumentative and like combative, and then he gets stabbed, and I'm like, oh my god, what is happening? And then I will say the conclusion of that sequence too, when Odin thinks he's getting away with the mask, and Kratos throws the spear right through the mask and pins it to the wall. Excellent scene, because you think normally in any other narrative, the villain would have gotten away with the MacGuffin as it is, right? Yeah. And you would have had to go retrieve it. But in this game, it's like, no, that's not happening. And it really also, it's a little bit of extra of a twist at the end of the twist, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I love that segment. And I will say this, I'm curious to replay it at some point, because I've heard people say that there actually are segments that are, some of Tyr's dialogue, Tyr, when I mean Odin, there are segments earlier in the game where you can kind of pick up on like, this might not be Tyr. But I'm going to be honest, I never noticed anything, so I'll be curious to replay it.
Yeah,
and see.
I don't think there's New Game Plus in the game yet, is there? I think
I
they
don't think so.
add that in. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves in gaming is when you do the hardest things in the game and it gives you equipment as a reward.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, thank you, but what am I gonna do with this?
Yeah, you're at the end of the game.
Yeah, like I've just done the hardest thing in the game. What am I supposed to do with this? But yeah, man.
I'm sure they'll add it in. I know they did with 2018. I don't
Right.
think it was in it at launch, and they patched it in.
Some of my favorite moments, I don't know. There's just so many good moments. I really liked the whole sequence there with Surtur when you go and make him help you when he turns into the beast and whatnot. I thought that was really cool because there's just so much. You really feel like you haven't even scratched the surface of this game world because they've developed it so deeply.
Right.
Yeah, that late in the game, they're just like, oh yeah, well now we have to go get this fire giant Surtur, and you know it's a whole big thing. But just we're gonna just go get him and turn him into a monster. It's like, okay, well that's pretty cool because he hasn't even been shown off at all. So, but yeah, I think I don't even know. There's a lot of really good moments. I think the ending fight with Thor is also really good.
Yes.
And honestly, the first fight,
the first fight with Thor was also good. Dude, the moment where he quote unquote kills you and the game goes into a like loading screen and he's
so
like,
cool.
I'm not finished with you. And he does the shock and the loading screen pops out. Such a good moment.
Such a good moment. A good moment. The other moment that I really loved was when you're Atreus and you go and meet Freya at the beginning of the game.
Yes.
And you're really not sure what's going to happen, you know? Now, I did unfortunately have the fact that she becomes your ally spoiled to me because I was just browsing through TikTok and I saw someone playing it on their live and she was in his boat. And I was like, oh, God, why? You know, I did so good not getting spoiled for this game and playing it. And that was spoiled for me. What did you think of the more open companion system in this game as opposed to the first one? I thought it was really cool.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I really liked how it gave you more time with other characters. I mean, because you had several, right? I mean, you had Atreus, you had
Sindri,
you had
Brock,
Sindri, right?
Atreus's sword, which Ingrid, that was the name of it. Pretty much almost every major character became a
even Thor
companion at some point. Yeah, even Thor. So I really liked it. It almost felt like the game was designed to be co-op in a way because it was so integral in I can't speak today. Integral to the combat.
Yeah.
And I don't remember it being that deep in the first game. I remember Atreus having a few abilities, but in this game they really go deep where it almost feels like these characters were built to be played and it's just an AI controlling them is what it really feels like. Especially when it comes to like Freya and well, Atreus does get, you do play as him, but I would say that Freya in particular feels really, really good. When you're not controlling her, but using her abilities and having her like stun enemies and enter her poison cloud and whatnot. But yeah, I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and I loved how they had like, I can't remember if it was this way in 2018, but I love how they had their own skill trees and stuff too, and you could change their clothing and upgrade their weapons and skills and all that. I thought that was really neat, and I like the overall. I mean, especially with Atreus and Freya, the different like arrow types, and there was just so much to handle. But I love that. I loved having that extra portion of the combat that I, was able to mess around with and really, frankly, just be able to play with the enemies. Essentially, I mean, you have so many options in this game, and I did want to ask you though, because you just touched on it. What did you think of playing as Atreus overall?
I think that, because my initial reaction is to say I never really enjoyed playing as him, but that's not really true.
Yeah.
Because I did enjoy it. It's just you spend, what would you say, roughly 20 to 30% of the game as Atreus,
Yeah,
I would say.
I would say so.
And he doesn't feel as good as Kratos.
I agree.
And I think that when you're developing a game like God of War and the main character is Kratos and he plays so well and it's so much fun to play as Kratos and you get the tactileness of like the axe and the flowingness of the blades, and then they force you to spend 30% of the game as Atreus, whose combat in my opinion feels a lot lighter, a lot weaker,
Yeah.
and it's not bad. It's just that it didn't feel as good as Kratos. So anytime I was using Atreus or forced to use Atreus, I was trying to get those segments done as fast as possible because I was like, I don't really want to. I want to get back to playing as Kratos.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about Atreus in this game is that he doesn't get the character growth that I think he gets in the first game. He goes through and makes mistakes in this game over and over and over again, and then he has this moment in this game where he kind of just crumbles, right? And he's like, all right, Dad, I'll do whatever you want, where he has this like down and out moment.
Yeah.
But
you're talking about after he lets Garm out, right? It's kind of
yes
when that happens. Yeah.
But he never feels like he recovers from that. And I don't know, in the first game he got so much character growth, right? Because in my opinion it was sort of like the Ahsoka syndrome from Star Wars, where you start out, you're like, God, this kid's annoying, like just get out of here. And then by the end of the game he has this huge amazing character arc where he kind of turns into like this real asshole when you find out that you're gods, and then he makes mistakes and he accidentally kills Modi. Was it Modi he kills?
I think so.
Yeah, and then he learns his lesson, and then he becomes a more formidable ally to Kratos by the end of the game. With this one, I would say he's in like an awkward teenage phase where he just doesn't really know what he's doing.
He never feels fully like confident, was what I kind of grabbed until the end.
He feels like his dad's holding him back. I don't know. I don't want to say I don't like him. I just feel like he could have been written a little better, because I really do feel like his segments are the ones that weigh the game down, especially when you go to the Ironwood, right? And he doesn't have the foresight. And it feels like we're watching a different story than he's participating in, because he goes to the Ironwood and he has this whole giant segment about how he would never help Odin. And as soon as he gets out, he's like, well, I'm going to go undercover and go help Odin.
Yeah.
What is the point of this? Because, and I understand like what they're trying to say. They're like, okay, well, in his mind, he's not really helping him.
Right.
But can you not understand that that's exactly what the prophecy was saying when you looked at it? Like it wasn't, it was just showing you helping him. And then you said you weren't going to do that. And then you're going and doing that, thus furthering the inevitable death of your father. So I don't know.
So just to give my thoughts, I enjoyed his segments overall. I do agree though that I don't think he played quite as well as Kratos. I think at the end of the day, like he's not as hard hitting, and that's what I really appreciate about God of War, is just that like brutality, I guess, for lack of a better word. And he didn't really have that. I mean, I still thought he played really well though, to be honest with you. But what I was going to say, you were talking about his story. I still enjoyed him as a character in this game. Frankly, I kind of hated him in the first one.
Right.
But I think that's on purpose. I think that's just part of the game, is him being like this, especially like you mentioned, after he finds out they're gods, he's kind of just like, all right, I'm going to be an asshole now.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing that I kind of
line, we're tired of hearing about your little people problems or whatever.
I forgot about that.
That's awesome.
Oh my God. The thing that I picked up on, I don't know if you felt the same way. I haven't talked to anybody about this game, so I have no idea what like the consensus is. But I wrote down a few notes. I was just kind of thinking about this earlier. To me, 2018 was more of Atreus' story. Like it was about him discovering he was Loki and coming into being a god and all this stuff. what I found was that Ragnarok is more of Kratos' game, and Kratos learning that, in the first game you had Atreus figuring out he could trust his dad. In this game, what I found was Kratos is figuring out he needs to trust his son.
Right.
And I thought that was a really interesting mirror. Often, again, I don't know what the consensus is, but often I found myself kind of some of the dialogue portions from Kratos. I found myself kind of getting annoyed with him this time around,
definitely.
rather than Atreus in the first game. And I really like that mirror of, you've got these two flawed characters at the end of the day. The first game is about one, the second game is about Kratos and their respective flaws. And I loved that overall arc. You look at, in particular, I think the most powerful moment in the game for me was, there were so many, but the last like 30 minutes or so when they're at Asgard, they're in the middle of Ragnarok, and Kratos looks at Atreus and he goes, this is about, the whole several hours before he's been about, we're doing this for vengeance. And then suddenly he looks at Atreus and goes, no, I was wrong. We're doing this for justice, not for vengeance.
Right.
I was wrong. Open your heart. Don't close your heart. And to me, as somebody that's played every God of War game, I was astounded by the fact that like Kratos has come from this awful person essentially and has totally changed into what he is now. And so that was what I picked up on, was it was more of his story and more of how he's changing this time around rather than Atreus. And I love that.
Right. I think some of my issues with the first half of the game do come from Kratos's motivations and the fact that he just couldn't see. He couldn't see that, like, he couldn't run away from all these issues. Because even up until the final segment of the game, when he realizes that Ragnarok is about to start, he's like, "We're leaving. We're going away. We're gonna try and hide this thing out." And it's like, well, you kind of can't, and that was frustrating to see. But you're right. Like, this whole game is about the redemption of Kratos and what he's going to do moving forward. And I'll say, man, like, I got really emotional at the very end of the game. When like you sit here and you see him open the other side of the of the, I don't know what we call them, the cabinets or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this is the finale of this character development we've been seeing since 2005. I don't remember when the God of War 1 came out, maybe earlier, but I'm like, wow, like, and you see Kratos like get emotional for the first time. Like, he never really, I mean, he's gotten emotional, but he hasn't really like broken down like that. And he sees that there is a path for redemption and like to become a benevolent god instead of a god to be feared. And I thought that was a really powerful scene from my point of view. I think that might be my favorite scene in maybe any Sony first party game ever. I thought the ending of Ragnarok went right up there with the ending of Spider-Man on PS4. I thought they were both just fantastic games and with endings.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree. And I do agree with you. I mean, just seeing it was like the image of like him holding the axe and like people were praying to him and stuff. And it's an interesting callback too, because earlier in the game, Odin talks to Kratos and he's like, has anyone ever prayed to you, ever worshipped you? And, it was neat to see that image following Ragnarok. But no, I mean, my thing, looking back on it, like playing the old God of War games, I never really liked Kratos as a person.
Mm-hmm.
But as they've adapted this character, as this character's grown, he's honestly become one of my all-time favorite characters, I would say. I mean, the growth that this character has seen from this just endlessly angry, again, horrible person, just for no reason, essentially, to now, I mean, some of the most in-depth character development I think I've ever seen in a game. It's incredible. Incredible. So Yeah, I mean, to me, that was what I picked up though. Overall, was just this was Kratos' game. I loved Atreus in this game, and I think he's still for me. He showed a lot of growth. I know
Hmm.
you said maybe not quite as much as the first game, and I would probably agree with that. But I still loved Atreus as well.
So, what did you think? When I was playing the game, I was getting frustrated because I felt like I wasn't running it into enough significant battles until the end of the game. Um, did you did you feel that way as well? Where like I felt like I was constantly just fighting these little monsters or whatever. I wasn't running into enough like epic boss
Yeah,
battles that I was coming to expect from the series. I think that may be my fault because I came into Ragnarok expecting like a bloodbath, right? I thought it was going to
yeah.
be like God of War 3 where Kratos is just killing all the pantheon of gods. Um but really Kratos doesn't kill any gods in this game until the last 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Um
I mean, I guess really the only one he kills is Heimdall, right? I mean, does he kill him?
oh yeah, Heimdall is I forgot about Heimdall. That was a cool boss
Really?
fight.
Anyone else? Yeah.
No, no. I mean, cuz Thor is killed by Odin and then Odin's killed
Yeah.
by what's his name?
Sindri.
Sindri, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, but I don't disagree with the to answer your question. I thought there were still more overall than in 2018. To be honest with you, I thought
mm,
the one thing for me that I loved about this game was there was more variety when it came to the enemies.
mhm.
But at the same time, maybe it was expectation, like you mentioned. I was expecting a little more as far as like the epic kind of scale. Not with the ending. I mean the final like 2 hours is just phenomenal.
Right.
But I was expecting more overall like you know, to face more gods and stuff like that. I mean, it was still interesting to fight like Needhog. I thought that was an
Right.
awesome fight. Really, really, really fun boss fight. But there and Heimdall. I mean, but there weren't really that many, I guess, spread out in between. So I don't disagree with you there. I was hoping maybe for a little bit more, but I mean, to piggyback off of that again, Ragnarok itself at the end. I mean, the final, really from when you get to Surtur to the end of the game, I thought the scale of that was phenomenal. I mean, it's
Oh
pretty
yeah,
much what I was expecting. I mean, I was
absolutely.
expecting this huge battle,
Mhm.
but it was so well done.
Yeah, when you just walk through the portal and you see the war going on all around them, and then it's just a constant barrage of fights until it ends. That was one of the best one of the best war sequences I think we've seen in video game history. And honestly, I know I've been quite negative in what I'm saying, but I really did love Ragnarok, and I think coming out of it, it might be my favorite first party game of all time for Sony. Um, and I think the best way to play this is right up against the 2018 version because they don't feel that different.
No,
And man, I think if you were to play this duology from the beginning straight through to the end, I think you would have a great time doing that. And um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I want so much more now too, right? Like I got to the end and I'm having a blast going through the post game content. Um, and I'm just like, man, I don't want to wait for them to make the next chapter of whatever this is going to be. And do you think they're going to make another chapter of it, or
I really don't know. I've
yeah,
been trying to think about this because they don't really give you much to go off of when it comes to the future of the series. They mentioned before this is the end of the Norse saga, so
right?
we already know that. But to me, it's like, okay, so where do you go from here? I mean, does he just leave again, or does Atreus become the character now? Like, where I don't know, to be honest with you. my first thought would be like Egyptian lore because that's kind of referenced here and there with Tyr's like belongings. But that's really the only place I could think for them to go next.
I think that as far as Kratos goes, it has to be done, right? Otherwise, you just kind of throw away all the development he had in this game. I almost wonder if they could do a God of War game with a different God of War, like from um, Aztec gods, or you
Oh,
could
that would be
continue the story with
interesting.
Loki,
Yeah.
or I just looked up the Egyptian God of War is named Montu. Um, but I feel like there has to be some sort of continuation, especially when you consider this game is selling like insanely well. I think first
Yeah.
week it sold 5 million copies. Um, Also, God of War's just always been very popular, and they kind of leave Atreus' story on a cliffhanger,
Yeah.
and you don't really know what's going to happen next with him. And with how much character development he got and how much time we've spent with him, I feel like it's very odd to leave that character on a cliffhanger. So I'm sure they have some sort of idea of what they're going to do with him. I wouldn't mind seeing a Loki video game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if
No, I
that's what they're
agree.
going for, but it'd be pretty cool.
No, I mean, I definitely want to see more of both of them,
Mhm.
but I agree with you. I wouldn't mind a Loki specific game. The other thing I was going to point out too is, and I don't know if you've done this side quest yet, so I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't, but there's a side quest at the end that involves Sindri. Have you done that one?
I have not. No.
Okay, so I won't spoil it for you, but what I'll tell you is that that whole conflict between Sindri and Kratos and Loki and Kratos and Atreus after Brock's murder by Odin is not resolved. There's an interesting side quest that you should go do where it basically just those hard feelings remain, and so I'm curious. Is that something they're just going to leave hanging,
Is that
or
is that Brock's funeral? Is that the side quest?
yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's
yeah,
what I'm gonna do next because there was the Asgard remnants, and I saw a bunch of them were in Svartalfheim. So I was like, all right, I'll just
hmm
hammer out the other ones, do the remnants, and then I'll do Brock's. And I just finished the remnants right before this podcast. So.
yeah. So, but that's the other place I was thinking. I mean, I don't really know that they could make a whole game out of that conflict,
Mm.
but that's the one thing I would say feels pretty unresolved. I was a little disappointed with how that kind of wrapped up, but as I thought about it more, I mean, there are several moments leading up to Ragnarok where they're like, you know, if you're going to war, you have to be willing to sacrifice, and so maybe in their eyes as writers, that was their kind of way of showing, look, like Sindri sacrificed to make this war, since Kratos and Atreus really didn't sacrifice anything.
I will say I love the ending moment when they're all when Atreus steals Odin's soul,
hmm
and Freya's like, oh, now that we've beaten him, I don't really need to kill him. And Sidhu just grabs it and smashes it. He's like, fuck this guy.
Oh no, it was awesome.
Yeah, I
It
was
was
like, wow,
awesome.
this is pretty sweet.
Which, by the way, I have to say, because we haven't touched on it yet, another one of my favorite story beats from this whole game was the relationship with Brock and Sindri, because
Yes.
we get a lot of them in the first game, but the character development we see with them in this game is extremely impressive. I mean, the whole
Hmm.
plot about Brock dying and being brought back to life by Sindri, but like with only part of his soul, and the whole experience of going to the Lady of the Forge and her not acknowledging Brock, and of course his death. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how well they expanded on these characters that, again, were good in the first game, but they were essentially just,
Right.
like the shopkeeps. And it was fantastic to see them expanded on.
Also, Freya's character. I thought Freya was so much more interesting in this game and so cool. And I I don't I'm going back and forth on it, right? Because I felt like the writers made like an obvious romantic connection between Kratos and Freya. But that doesn't line up with the story they were trying to tell with Kratos and Faye. That's her name, right? Faye.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That seemed odd to me. Um, but I loved Freya in this game. And I thought that
Yeah.
the chemistry between her and Kratos was like really spot on, really well written, and the character development she gets is insane in this game. So
Yeah, it
big
was
fan.
really well done. I mean, the first like 10 hours or so, she's just like pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that version of her. But then just seeing, her going from that into, hey, we're like all mad at the same guy here.
Right.
I understand where we're at. I understand why you killed my son in the first game. It was very well done,
Mm-hmm.
uh, character development. The other thing I was going to ask you though, Seth, for me, aside from I mentioned earlier the mirror of the game focusing on Kratos and his issues, for lack of a better word, and how he's changed as a character. The other thing that I thought was most intriguing overall about the story, and the thing that like kept me going, was the prophecy itself
Mm-hmm.
of, is Kratos going to die? Because I'll be honest, I was very convinced that he was
Me
a
too.
goner.
Me too.
Like I was positive he was going to die. The second they introduced Atreus as a playable character, I was like, okay, I know where this is going.
Yep.
They're
Same.
obviously setting this up for Kratos to die.
Yep. Same.
And I thought the pivot away from that, and especially the pivot to, he didn't die because Faye set them out on this journey in the very first moments of 2018. That was the whole plot, was she set them out. She tried to change the prophecy by setting them out on this. Such a good twist.
Yes.
It really was a nice ending. Like, that's the best way to put it. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just a nice resolution. And I love that. It's not often you see kind of like just okay, this is cleanly wrapped up. This happened. And here the characters are. I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah. Like you, I thought Kratos was gonna die for sure the entire game, and that as Atreus, you were gonna get revenge on him or something like that. Yeah, I thought for sure, and like we've been hearing ever since the Last Jedi came out, like subverting audience expectations. Right, this is how you do it right. Um, I think that in God of War's case, it just happens over and over and over again, and you really don't know what's going to happen next. You think you do, but you don't. And there's so many twists and turns in this story that it keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. And dude, once the game started like going uphill towards the climax, I couldn't stop playing it. I was bringing my Razer Kishi with me. I was playing at work. I was every second I got that I had time, I was playing God of War. And man, what a great experience! Because yeah, just like you never knew what was going to happen. Because even when you wake up and play as Atreus, after the final fight, I was like, well, Kratos is probably dead.
That's what I thought too. I
Yeah,
was like, well, Kratos died, right? Like,
yeah,
or he's about to die.
or he's sick or something.
Yeah.
And we were going into the final fight, and Caitlin was with me on the couch, and I was like, I'm just preparing myself because this is about to get real sad.
Hmm.
And it didn't. So I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And I was wondering how they were going to do that with the post game, because I knew there was a post game, but I
Yeah.
kind of assumed you were just going to be Atreus. But yeah, it worked
Yeah,
out.
I had like put so many like logical explanations into
Mhm.
my head of like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Kratos is going to die. Post game, he's going to be in Valhalla or something, and like he's just going to be going around in Valhalla with
Yeah,
his like son in his memory, and like that's what the post game is going to be. I had all this thought out of like, how are they going to do this? Because it seems so obvious. Like
yep,
Kratos was obviously gonna die,
yep.
and he didn't. And I love that. I mean, you even get that whole, again, super powerful sequence when right before Ragnarok, the night before, they lay down in the tent. It's
Hmm.
like Kratos lays down in the tent, and then Atreus walks up, and he's like, "Hey, can I stay in here too?" And Kratos is kind of just laying there, and like telling him the story. And Kratos is obviously like ready to die. Like he thinks it's going to happen, and to protect his son. And I thought just that whole prophecy plot line, the putting it out there that like, oh, Kratos is going to die the entire game, and then it not happening, was just such a nice change of pace compared to other mediums where it's like, obviously the bad thing's going to happen to the main character. Like, obviously that's going to happen, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it this time. And I loved the subversion. Like you said, I thought that was the proper subversion of expectations.
Right. And then I also just want to give a shout out to the side quests in this game. Because I think this is how you do side quests correctly. They're not just fetch quests. I mean, some of them are, some of the smaller ones, but like there's maybe 20 major side quests in the game, and they all give you something phenomenal in them, right? Like, the one in Alfheim where you're freeing those jellyfish things. I don't remember the name of them.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, this is like a really cool event that you could just completely miss if you didn't do this. Yeah. And I bet, a lot of people that rushed through those story did miss these things. And I feel more convinced than ever that it's quality over quantity as far as open worlds go, because there's enough little encounters and events to keep it interesting. But when you're doing a side quest in Ragnarok, there's going to be an interesting story. That there's going to be a really good payoff, and you want to go out and do all these side quests. It's not like you're grinding for experience or money or something. You want to go ahead and accomplish these things. Like, dude, I'm so hyped to go after all these gravestones and get in, because I've already defeated two of them. God. And I've already defeated two of them, and I'm like, all right, here we go, baby. I've been waiting for this, because I had started to go after the Valkyries in God of War 1, and then I got distracted. There was some other game that came out, but I always meant to go back and platinum that game. And I think I might actually go for the platinum in this game. Have you looked at the trophy list?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem too bad. I think I'm of the same mindset. I don't know that I'm going to like push through it, but I think I'm going to just continue to slowly chip away at it and get to it over time. Because it really is just a matter of doing the side quests, buying the armor pieces. There's really nothing that hard in the platinum. It's just a matter of seeing everything you can see.
Collect all the books, collect all the artifacts.
And I've seen several people get it.
Remember
so
the Spartan
far,
teachings. I wonder what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I got that trophy, and I was trying to figure out what that was. I didn't know what it was.
I wonder if that's when
I have no idea why I got it.
That's probably when you get the spear, because he talks about how...
Yeah. Which, by the way, that spear is awesome. The whole backstory with that spear is phenomenal.
I agree. I didn't really understand. Did they ever explain how it was gonna defeat Heimdall, though? Like that's one part of it that I didn't really
No, I do agree with that.
Because they're like, oh yeah, this is gonna defeat Heimdall, and then like it does, but they never really explain why. And I'm like, all right, well we'll just chalk it up to...
Yeah, they didn't really explain why. I guess mechanically, like, I understand why, because when you play that boss fight, you have, at least this is the way I played it. I don't know if you played it this way or if you can play it another way, but I would throw the spikes down like on the ground and then explode them.
Yes.
So I don't know if you have to play it that way. So I get it mechanically, but also at the same time, I'm like, well, wouldn't he have just known that he was going to throw those on the ground and like explode them?
Exactly. That's what I didn't understand. I was like, well, he's supposed to be able to like read minds or tell the future or something sort of similar like that. He would just know what you were doing the entire time, so I'm not really sure.
He had some real Joffrey energy, by the way. I hated that guy in a good way.
I know. It was so satisfying to fight him. I'm like, absolutely, let's go. He's
that villain you love to hate.
Yeah, and
it was really, really good.
I was just waiting the whole time. I was like, keep it up, buddy, because your time's coming. Clock is a ticking.
So that's really all I wanted to touch on, Seth. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
But wanted to give a shout out to Deborah Ann Wolf as Faye.
Yes.
those of you who don't remember, she's the former Daredevil actor. And they cast her in this game, and I thought her segments were very well written and acted. And she's really the catalyst to Kratos's character growth. Other than that, just definitely go out and play Ragnarok, man, because the game is phenomenal, and I don't understand how Sony keeps doing it. They just keep putting out these experiences, and it's solidifying to me that not only is Sony the best at these experiences, these games, it's solidifying to me that games are the best medium for storytelling, and also that I hate long form storytelling in video games, because now we have to wait God knows how long until the next chapter of this story, and it's
gonna be a long time.
There is maybe, dude, I've cried at video games a couple times, right? Like the ending of Spider-Man PS4 really got to me. The ending of this game got to me. And then, like, I think when it was confirmed that Final Fantasy VII Remake there was something along with Final Fantasy VII Remake when that was confirmed, or when I first started playing that. But like, I don't know. Sony just keeps getting me.
Yeah. No, I definitely had multiple moments in this game where I teared up. I mean, there were just too many.
Teared up.
So, yeah, but I do agree with you. I think it will be interesting to see what they do next. I'm not looking forward to the wait, because I think that the thing you see with this game is a lot of the world itself was recreated from 2018. Not all of it. I'd say maybe a good 30-35% of it. I'm sure they reused a lot of the assets and maybe up-res them a little bit. But that being said, it was still a 4-year wait from 2018. So I'm looking forward to what they do next in this world. But at the same time, I know it's going to be a long time from now. And I wish it was sooner.
I really think I'm going to get a replica of the Blades of Chaos and the Leviathan axe, and I'm going to put them up on the wall in my new house.
Yeah, do it.
That's so, like,
I have this. Is so cool.
I have this idea because we're buying a 3-bedroom house, and me and Caitlin obviously don't need 3 bedrooms, and so I'm going to have a game room. She's going to have an art room, and I think in the my game room, I'm just going to get a whole bunch of replicas of like video game weapons. And I'm gonna hang them up like an armory in my house. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So last thing I'll say is you touched on Faye, so I'll quickly touch on Odin, because I thought that Odin's portrayal was honestly a subversion of expectations.
Yes.
When he first showed up, I was like, what the hell is this? What's going on here?
You're probably thinking, like I did, that he was gonna be like this hulking, like regal. No, he's like this frail old man. I think that's pretty interesting too, because you didn't see it coming, but
no, and he's like a trickster in a way, and like, I mean, that's the whole game, is he's lying the entire game. And I loved that portrayal, because when I think of Odin, and again, I don't have much experience with Norse mythology, so I don't know if this is how he's normally portrayed or what, but when I think of Odin, like you said, I think of this ultra powerful, omnipotent being, and that was not at all what he was like in this game. It really gave him a lot of character. I loved him as a villain.
I do want to state where as we wrap this up, I do want to state where I hope the series does go next. Because I was looking into this. Did you know there is a very prevalent theory that's emerging that the Norse mythology and the Christian religion is the same mythology? and
No,
that
that's interesting.
Loki is actually Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah, you can look into this. It's really interesting. I'm just saying. All right, I'm just saying. I would love to see Kratos lay the smackdown on some Christian mythology. Like, can you imagine the shitstorm that would emerge from like Fox News and oh my god, the internet chaos.
And then Kratos, instead of the God of War, the next game will just be called God.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But like Kratos just fist fighting, Lucifer or something like that would be so cool,
Yeah.
man. So cool.
Awesome.
But
love to see it. So yeah, my final thoughts overall, I thought the game was fantastic. 2018 is my favorite PS4 game. I mean, I don't see how anything could beat this as my favorite PS5 game, except
Agreed.
for maybe Spider-Man 2. So we'll see what that turns out to be.
Agreed.
But play it. If you haven't played 2018, play that and play this. If you're somehow still listening this far in, I feel bad that you got spoiled on everything.
It's been a long time since a game has hooked me in like this and made me
Agreed.
feel this way, where I'm just like, I can't get enough, and
I think Control was the last one for me.
Yes. So excited for Control 2, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
God of War Ragnarok, one of the best games of the last 10 years, for sure. Maybe one of the best games of all time.
Easily.
Play it right now. Whatever you're doing.
If
you're driving a car, stop your car.
Pull over.
Yep. Or drive to the closest Walmart, buy a PS5 game, play it right there in the store.
They have TVs there in the store, plug it in.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening. If you have thoughts about God of War Ragnarok, please send them in. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff at frameskippod. Seth is at Seth the 90s Kid on Twitter.
Yep. Go follow me.
And I am on Twitter at Austin J. Eller. So go follow us there. And again, if you've got your own thoughts, feel free to send them in. We'd love to hear them and chat about them with you online. So thank you all for listening. And again, go play God of War Ragnarok if you have not. And if you have, still go play it. Because that's what I'm going to do.